to Public Safety and Human Services Committee meeting met 2 months ago, and consensus at the time from the public, from committee members, and from those in the community that joined us was that we would meet every other month over WebEx, contingent on if there's something in the community that merited having a forum like this. So let's go ahead and get started with a roll call from committee members. I'll run down the list, and if you can hear me, go ahead and shout out. Lisa Bamonte.
Here.
Gina Argento.
Here.
Bogdan Bakaratsky. Gina Barrows. Teresa Sancionato. Giovanni D'Amato. Aaron Drinkwater. I think I saw you jump on.
Yep, I'm here.
Awesome. Arthur Timanowski. Lloyd Feng. I think I saw you as well.
Here.
Awesome. Moishe Indeg. Zina Kaminsky.
Present.
Awesome. Yoel Landau. Maria Lianzes. Yoel Lowe. Maria Vieira. Roger Capucci. Esther Judelson. Saw you as well, I think.
Yep, I'm here.
Lindsay Pagna. And John Rosmus.
Here.
Awesome. Perfect. So we've got a quorum. So as far as agenda for tonight, I think tonight might be a little briefer than some of the other meetings we've had in the past. With us tonight is Sandra Sanchez, FDNY Community Liaison. We have Captain Fahey and Officer Molina from the 94th Precinct. We have Officer Omar. Are you with us from PSA 3? Maybe jumping on a little later. And we've got DSS with us as well. And representatives from, Emily Galler is jumping on as well. Sandra, I'll tell you what, do you want to take it away and give us an update over the past couple months in the community?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much, Ronan, for allowing me to be able to present first. Unfortunately, I do have to run, but what will happen is that I'll put all my contact information. Ronan has my contact information, so if there are some follow-up questions that I may miss while the conversation continues, you can feel free to circle back with me. Sandra Sanchez here from FDNY Community Affairs, and I want to share with you, we are firmly into winter. I say this because I just looked at the weather, and I'm sure that there are a few single-digit temperatures that are planned for us this very weekend. And we are very mindful that winter season coincides with our fire season. That's due to candles, as I mentioned in our previous in-person meetings, the usage of space heaters, cooking issues, and then the new hot topic, unfortunately, on the block happens to be lithium-ion batteries. Thankfully, since the last time we met and we conversed, there were no fatalities within the confines of Brooklyn Community Board 1, but that was not the case for Queens. Just about, I want to say, a little over 2 weeks ago, there was a fatal fire, lithium-ion batteries. There were 3 lithium-ion batteries found within that residence, and we know those types of fires spread very quickly. So we have on our FDNY Smart website a plethora of information as it relates to lithium-ion batteries. What I will do is that I'll share our winter PSA with Ronan, that you and the community board can share that information widely. Please, we encourage you. You never have to ask my permission to share some of the fire safety education tips that we have available on our platform. But it's very important. Many of us participate in many of the activities that we haphazardly we leave. Who's rushing to go into work and may leave an appliance plugged in. I know that I've been guilty of that, but we want to be very mindful of some of our practices to make sure that we are keeping not only the persons within our home safe, but also our property and our neighbors safe as well. before I wrap up, allow me to share with you the statistics for Brooklyn Community Board 1 for fires that occurred within the confines in the month of December, because we report the previous month. So for structural fires, there were 41. Non-structural fires, there were 27. Medical emergencies, there were 637. Non-medical emergencies, there were 563, bringing the total amount of incidences within the confines of Community Board 1 to be 1,268. To put that in perspective, for the entire borough of Brooklyn, there were 15,460 incidences. Thank you so much for your time. And if you have any questions, I'm able to stick around for just a few more minutes. You can feel free to communicate that in the chat, or I'm reachable at sandra.sanchez@fdny.nyc.gov. Be well.
Thank you so much, Sandra. So I think last time you were with us a couple months ago, you had mentioned that in the community there were 600 incidents, and across Brooklyn there were 15,000.
Let me pull up. Hold on. Let me compare and contrast. We have though relatively new. We have our system's a little archaic where it doesn't show me the previous month. It shows me, it compares it to last year.
I'm on. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you, Maria. Thanks for jumping on.
Thank you. Thanks, Lisa.
Yeah. Good to have you. And so I know last time you were with us, you were telling us with lithium batteries that this was something that was kind of the new cause of concern. You'd mentioned a couple tips just for the community to buy products with UL rated batteries and to coordinate with block associations.
Yes, it's very important. This is not only for, I don't want to limit it to lithium ion batteries. Many of the fires that we're seeing, they're second market products. We're guilty. We see something and it's cheaper on Amazon, and not cheaper by a little, cheaper by a lot. So the price point is an alluring factor to us. But when you're buying second market products, oftentimes they have not been UL rated. Underwriters laboratory tested to say that they've been tried and true, and that they can withstand certain temperatures, certain environments as well. But what part of the safety tips that we shared our last time together is also to be very mindful when you are charging when you are charging any appliance, you must be present. It's easier said than done, but especially with lithium ion batteries, this is not the time to go to sleep and take a nap, because you're not able to see if there's a particular smell, if there's a particular odor, or even a spark that's taking place. So when you are charging these devices, we ask that you are able to have some eyes. You're able to have all your senses focused to that, because if you do notice something, if you see something that is out of the ordinary, immediately stop the usage to the best of your ability, and to make sure that product, that device is removed from the home.
And how much of those incidents come from things like electric bikes and scooters and mopeds? Are those kind of the leading items of UL? Those are the biggest culprits. That's a big question. UL Underwriters Laboratory inspects many of our daily appliances. So we're talking about like toasters, even our surge protectors. So the breakdown, I do not have that breakdown of the amounts of incidents that occurred throughout the city that are targeted towards particularly a non-UL rated appliance. Perhaps with some more prodding and investigation from the marshals, we'll be able to tell whether on a bigger scale, whether it was from an appliance
or whether it is lithium ion battery related. In the last few years, we have been tracking the fires, particularly towards lithium ion batteries. But the truth of the matter is that when we're doing our investigation, some of our what we consider our clues are is difficult to determine when you after the fire is done. There's little evidence left. there's little evidence left. Let's leave that. Let's say it that way. There's little evidence left to really go and determine if we're not having interviews with the residents, or they're not forthcoming with that information.
Gotcha. Cool. Committee members, any questions or thoughts? Anyone from the public with any questions or thoughts? Awesome. Well, Sandra, thank you so much for your time. We'll see you in a couple months. Appreciate everything. Captain Fahey and Officer Molina. I'll let you guys take it away next with 94th Precinct. Oh, I think you're muted.
Hey. Hi, good evening, everybody. Yeah, I'll go over quickly for the 28-day period. We're up about 10% over last year in crimes. That's really primarily being driven by grand larcenies. We've had 45 incidences of grand larcenies versus 31. We have seen a reduction in robberies, burglaries, and felony assaults. So, you know, this is a community that the property crimes still continue to drive the crime. Most recently, we have patterns involving Lyft drivers where individuals are approaching them, telling them somebody else booked the Lyft, I need to change the location in your phone, and then they wind up accessing their bank account. So we've had about 4 or 5 incidents of that, Lyft drivers being targeted recently. You may have seen in the news, there was a robbery spree that went on. We had an incident here with that robbery spree. They robbed a food truck over on North 11th Street. But the witness from that incident was able to give us the plate, which ultimately led to their being apprehended in the Bronx in the 46th precinct. So those 2 individuals were arrested, but they committed a number of robberies throughout Queens, Manhattan, Brooklyn, and finally into the Bronx. So if you have any particular questions, you know, this is the felony assaults. We have arrests attached to all the felony assaults that happened in the 28-day period. You know, that's really what our focus is on. We're using our crime prevention. We have a new crime prevention officer, Officer Montalvo. So we really want to educate the public about these scams. You know, we're seeing check fraud where somebody approaches you at a bank vestibule and they want to, you know, just deposit this check for me, and then they wind up either taking the money as you're at the ATM, or the check bounces, you pay them the money and they go. So, you know, we still have the retail issues, the retail theft. I will tell you that we have some new officers that just are out of the academy. We got 9 of them, and they're in field training at this point, but we have them primarily stationed in Sector Adam, which is the north side around those stores. So I think that that's kind of helped us a little bit. We also got somebody who was a serial recidivist as far as shoplifting goes. He committed a lot of grand larcenies, so we're working with the DA's office to hopefully, he hit Lululemon like 10 times between here in the 9-4, and then this individual was also hitting their stores in Manhattan. So, you know, that's really what we're focused on, identifying, you know, the worst of the worst, the people that are really driving this crime, and, you know, working with our partners in the district attorney's office to make sure that they're appropriately, you know, sentenced, that, you know, these are expedited so that we don't have them preying on the community.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for all of that. Couple quick questions for you. As far as smoke shops, so I know last time we had spoken and before then you had seen an increase in robberies of smoke shops and others similar to that. Do you have any insight into that the past month or two?
So it's kind of abated here in the 9-4. It's always a concern. Some of the robbery locations, we're seeing bodega, smoke shops, anything where people can get in quick. They come at late in the night. Currently, that isn't a big problem for us. We did have an arrest at a smoke shop recently, but actually the smoke shop worker was arrested for assaulting somebody that they had told to get out, and then he didn't leave, so he came at him with a hammer. So, we're keeping an eye on all of that. We do frequent visits to the smoke shops, but we're also working with the sheriff's office to crack down on the illegal sale of cannabis. So the sheriff's office has primarily been tasked with performing, the visits to these smoke shops. We're actually taking a back seat. But we do have our eye on the unlicensed sale. If, there's any issues, we actually just removed there was a cannabis truck over North 5th in Bedford. We removed that individual. So if they're popping up, we certainly don't want them by schools. We don't want unlicensed sale of this to go on. While it's legal, we still have licensing requirements, that we will enforce. So if you see any issues and you want to let us know, we'll make sure to address them.
So you've been seeing more unlicensed sales?
So some of these smoke shops have the product. So those are all technically unlicensed. That's kind of why we saw the proliferation of these stores, because they wanted to position themselves to be able to sell it when it became legal. But, these licenses have been reserved to people that have been disadvantagedly affected by, criminal convictions and things. So, the state is issuing these licenses. So all of these shops that are selling any type of product, it's unlicensed, it's unregulated, and that's something that we want to get a handle on. So the sheriff's office, like I said, they've been primarily tasked with going in and performing the business inspections, but we're working in conjunction with them to prioritize our worst locations if they have other type of connections, if there's other drug sales going on, if we have violence coming out of there, if we know that gang members are hanging out at some of these locations. So we're working with the sheriff's office to let them know which are our top priority, because there's so many of them. They kind of have to prioritize which ones they visit.
Absolutely. And grand larcenies, I know that was something you mentioned last meeting and here again. Is there a rise of grand larceny specific to nightlife and areas like that?
Most recently, no. It's a lot of unattended property. People either forget something that's over $1,000 on the train, or we saw an uptick in McCarran Park. They leave their bags. A lot of people are very trusting, so they think they may be playing soccer and they left their bags in a pile with other bags, and somebody comes along and cleans them out. So that's really more the public awareness not to leave anything of value. We're seeing it from cars. A lot of the grand larcenies we experience are also from the e-bikes, the delivery people that leave their e-bikes, they go into a building to make a delivery and they come out and the bike is gone. So most of them are very expensive. They're over $1,000. So every incident of that, those become grand larcenies for us as well. So we try to speak to the shops, educate the drivers as much as possible, to ask, where they can, the building, to keep an eye on it if there's management or security, so that they don't come out and find that their bikes are gone.
And then going off of that, are you still seeing a trend of theft of catalytic converters? And I think actually you mentioned last time that the vast majority of those were Honda CR-Vs. Is that still a trend?
So that's again, this is a crime that we see. It kind of ebbs and flows since I've been here over the last 3 years. I'll have a rash of them and then they abate. But I do want to say Broadway Stages was able to give us information that led to an immediate arrest of a live person. This person is known to us. He's been bouncing back and forth between us and the 108. We've arrested him numerous times. So they were great community partners, and we were able to arrest this individual live, which is very hard to do. It was a great example of using community eyes and ears so that we could get there and apprehend him. So I'm very grateful for the information they provided. And, again, these are the type of people that we highlight to the district attorney's office because, they're in the business of doing these crimes. They're not just doing a one-off. There's no remorse. They just get back out there and they're at it again. So these, like I said, these are the people that we would like some repercussions for. And we work with Chief Walsh over in the DA's office. He's been very helpful.
Eric, can you hear me? Eric Brusitis?
Yes, hi. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Hi. Hey everybody. Captain Fahey, I had a text today from former board member Tom Burrows. He's brought this up to me before. We've talked about this too. There are buses being stored, commercial buses being stored on Cherry Street, right before the entrance to the DQE at Vandervoort. And he mentioned that they're also parking across from the park now too. I've spoken to DOT about it, and the appropriate signage is up, and that's about all that they can do. But I wonder if you have any ideas. It falls, after the signs are up, it's on the 9-4 to do enforcement. I just wonder if that's on your radar or any thoughts on it.
Yeah, so once we put the summons on it, if they don't move, we've had this conversation a number of times. I know we've discussed it, certainly over by Kingslands. When we have these bigger vehicles that park, we issue a summons, it's $165, whatever. That's cheaper than them going and getting a storage location. So what we look to do is we have to partner with the Chief of Transportation's office if we're going to do like a summons and tow operation. So they have to share their heavy tow vehicles with the entire city. So we'll take a look at it, and if we can set up an operation over there to get some of them towed, so then it becomes a little bit more impactful monetarily for them as a consequence. But yeah, this has been a pervasive problem throughout the precincts. Any, commercial area, it's not just us, the 108, any place where there's businesses and a lot of space available and not a lot of residences, we see that businesses are taking advantage. So we also try to reach out to see who the owners are. I've personally called businesses and asked to speak to their upper level management, which sometimes is, it has an effect. But it's something that we constantly have to clear out and then start again because somebody else, pulls into the spot. So it's something that we're, always fighting against.
Right. Okay. Just thanks for that. And yeah, if we can maybe do a targeted thing. I know there's one heavy tow truck in the city that's all over the place. But maybe if you do a targeted thing in the next couple weeks or months to kind of increase the pain because it is cost of doing business. And Tom was saying today is that it was cars were having a lot of problems just squeezing through. So it's it's also a safety issue now. So
Okay, I'll use my traffic safety sergeant. We've also we have abandoned cars, so we're spread kind of thin.
I know.
For the area, but we definitely will, prioritize that.
I appreciate that. Thanks, Captain. Thank you, Ronan.
Yep, of course, Eric. Lisa Bamonte, I think you had a question as well.
Hi. Hi, everyone. I'm sorry, my camera's not working. Captain Fahey, how are you?
How are you?
Very good, thank you. I have two questions. So one question is about the trucks, the marijuana trucks that we see around. Are those legal? Like they're decorated nicely. Are those legal or not legal? I see
they are not legal.
Okay, all right.
So we removed 2 today. It was actually the same owner. of both. One looked more like a food cart, like one
Right.
of the coffee carts, and then one was like a bus. It had store hours. He even put out a sign having like the prices of the product. So anything like that, if you let us know, we
Okay.
can go over there. We can seize their products. We can tow the car because it's basically like the old unlicensed general vending. They don't have a license to be selling.
Okay.
And we certainly don't want those trucks near, grammar schools, high schools.
Right.
Because we know that they're not checking IDs. They're just gonna make the money and not really care what happens to who they're selling it to.
Okay. My other question was McCarran Park. So last week I heard that there were a couple of robberies around the park, like people walking. I don't know if it's true or whatever, but you would know, getting hit in the head, being mugged. My concern is after school, my kids and all their friends go to McCarran Park and play soccer after school every day. So, I was a little bit nervous now, saying to them, I'd rather you come home. But, they like that little time out with their friends and so on and so forth. So I was wondering if there is any police presence around there, whether it be undercover or whatever, after school hours to make, us parents feel a little bit more safe, having our kids go to the park after school.
So one incident that had happened, it was it was a younger person, and he knew the people who robbed him. They were, he knew them. They were acquaintances. So, an arrest was made on that one. And then the other one happened on like the first platoon, the Midnights. An
Right.
individual was walking through, and he was in his 20s.
Mhm.
And he was the one that was hit on the head while
Okay.
he was FaceTiming on his phone with his parents. And that one is part of a pattern. So, we have the detectives are investigating that. They have some pictures, of the perpetrators. There was more than one. So those are two kind of separate things. We do have our youth officers at dismissal. They're centered around the high schools, and then they're in the vicinity. They supervise the dismissals, making sure everything's okay. It's a lot of students moving from the schools to the train stations. And then, we do move around to the parks as well.
Okay.
But sometimes these are things with youth, like I would talk to the kids. Some of these are just interpersonal things that your children may be more aware of, people that are fighting and things like that, you may want to use that as your judgment, like not let them go to the park or know who they're going with, so that if they're troublemakers, that was that other robbery that involved the youth.
Yeah. Usually it's, from the kids from their class. So, some kids like live over on this side, and then, you have their other friends that live like more towards, like some in Greenpoint and some at Gorlick Park. So what they do is they just go to McCarran Park, they play a little bit, for an hour or two on the soccer field, and then they all disperse to come home for dinner. So it's kind of like a halfway point for everybody to congregate after school, which is pretty good. But like I always say to them, keep cell phones in your pockets, don't put them out, stuff like that, so they're not targeted.
Yeah, and we'd love to have somebody assigned permanently at the park, but we move around. They're doing directives, but there's always officers in the vicinity. So
Okay. All right. Thank you.
you're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa. Anybody else from the committee or public have any questions for Captain Fahey? Captain Fahey, I might have one more for you, and then I'll let you go. So any other trends to businesses that you've seen? I know we talked about lock boxes outside. At off hours. We talked about ATM and ATM signs being a target, and we talked about grand larceny with package thefts as well. Anything else that you'd seen as far as trends to businesses?
We still, every once in a while, we get the ones that we spoke of at the nightlife meeting with the them coming behind the counter and taking the credit cards. You know, we still are seeing that where they distract the bartender, or they just come back there and they take the card that has credit cards for the tab. So those are still kind of popping up here and there, not as frequently as they were.
And I know, so 90th is still going through that, where there's a trend where a group will come in and one person will distract the bartender by saying that there's a leak in the basement or something like that. Bartender will leave, and then that box with credit cards is stolen. But so you're saying that in the 94th, that's declining.
Yes, yeah, we haven't seen, I think that there was just maybe one, and it was a few weeks ago.
Got it. Got it. And so as far as 90th goes, there's been a transition with a new CEO coming in. Fortunately, he started a couple days ago, so he's not able to make it tonight. But one thing he had passed on is that in the 90th, there is a slight increase in grand larcenies. But next month, when he's here with us, he can speak to that. Any other trends to businesses that you've noticed or that we can watch out for?
No, I mean, we have the larcenies, the chain stores have the petty larcenies. There's nothing changed really.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, Captain Fay.
Thank you.
This is Simon Weiser, first vice chair. I joined the meeting.
Hi, Simon. Good to have you.
I was listening before. I didn't want to interrupt. So
No worries at all. Did you have any questions for Captain Fay or I don't know if Simon?
yeah, if it's possible. Can I talk now?
All you. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. First of all, I appreciate the captain coming on. I keep on getting many complaints about the electric bikes, going the wrong way and not obeying the simple, street laws and going into sidewalks. And at a certain time, we spoke about this, and sometimes they promise enforcement. They hit people. I mean, it happens, but they go they just like fly through the people on the sidewalks doing deliveries, and I think that sometimes some kind of enforcement is needed. And we've spoken about this in the past.
Yeah, and just to let you know, every day the traffic team is out there doing enforcement. Unfortunately, we're it's not just e-bikes. They're riding regular bikes that are running lights. They're riding cars, motorcycles. So they have to enforce everything. And as you can hear, between trucks, there's a lot of traffic that's moving through here. So there's trucks on.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but why I mentioned e-bike is because if you get hit with an e-bike, it's much stronger than with a regular bike. But you're right, and regular bikes as well. Yeah, I'm sorry for interruption. Right.
No, I mean, regular bikes go at speeds that if they hit an elderly person or a child, like there could be significant damage. So we have to, kind of spread our resources as far as they can go. E-bikes, again, the officers are limited by what they can observe. So obviously, for the most part, when officers are standing there, people aren't going to speed in front of them, or they're not going to go the wrong way. So we're well aware of these conditions. We also do outreach to the businesses so that we can educate the drivers. Some of them they're not aware that there's rules of the road. So we try to educate people as well so that they know that they're breaking the law first and foremost. And, we also, officers have discretion. So, when you talk about enforcement, they're making these stops, they're speaking to people. That's not something that can be quantified as a number, but that's within their right to issue discretion as well. So they may speak to them. They may not issue a summons. Some of these people are very hardworking, so we're not trying to give them summonses that's going to take a day wages from them. This is just a balance, but yeah, we're well aware of it. If there's a particular area of concern, if you let me know, we can make sure that gets extra attention.
I might add on to that if it's okay. We had a long conversation actually at the end with the 9-0 of the last meeting. I actually got hit by a moped on the Williamsburg Bridge and broke my femur and have been struggling for the last 4 months. So I would say that is a real fear. I think the bridge is a particular concern with mopeds and going on the bike lane where they shouldn't be at all. I would say also, I've seen a lot on Kent Ave. I know it's not your precinct, so we can always pick it up later, but I see them on the sidewalk here all the time going up and down. It is a lot. And I actually think, maybe it is worth at some point seeing if there's a way to track. I'm not saying that you should give more summons, but if there is a way to track the summons that are being given, it would be interesting to see some of that information.
Simon, can you hear me?
Yeah, hello?
Yeah, if you would you be able to mute yourself? It's just
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Of course. Sorry, Esther.
No worries. Yeah, no, I mean, that was it. I just think, if it's possible to keep track of some of the information, I think if it's easier to tell a story if there's some data behind the number of incidents, and I see it all the time. So I can't think I'm the only person. So.
And we track all the data as far as like accidents and who's involved in them and how much enforcement, that we issue. We're up in summonses. If you hold on 1 second, I can get you the exact number, but it's just, I don't think we're ever going to satisfy everybody with the amount of summonses because everyone has different complaints at different times. So, I have 3 traffic safety officers. Not only are they out there issuing the enforcement, but they're also, they're handling the abandoned cars. They're handling all of these problems. So, they are up in the summonses that they've issued. But that's just, we have to address all those conditions with a finite amount of resources. So,
I guess my point would be if they're up, maybe there's a way for us to get more resources, and if it's an area of particular concern.
Yeah, and like in the 9-4, we don't have like some other commands really have like collision prone locations where they're seeing repeats. We have the main thoroughfares like McGinnis, Manhattan, Meeker. We have these big thoroughfares, but we don't have these like collision prone locations where you're seeing 10 accidents. You're seeing people get hit all over in different places. So it makes it more difficult to say this is a problem spot. Listen, for anyone that gets hit in any location, to them, that's the most problematic spot because that's where it happened. But that's kind of why we have to do a general enforcement throughout the command. But certainly we do this analysis on a weekly basis. The computer does it, it spits it out for us. The officers are assigned based on that. So if like something's spiking this week, that's where the resources are going to go. But like I said, we're a little bit different than other precincts where they may have a spot that's showing up with, and it could be, there's a reason. We look at like, is the street sign, could it benefit from street signs? Is it an engineering issue? Do we need more enforcement there? Is it people, the contributing factor is that the 4 people that were hit all were on their phones at the time. Is it an education thing? So, we do a robust analysis of it. But it's just, it's difficult. Like just for an example, the total moving violations that were issued in the precinct in the last 28 days was 396 versus last year it was 135. So the enforcement is up. It's just, I don't know if it's ever going to feel like it's enough, but we'll continue. And like I said, if you have any areas of concern, please let me know and we'll direct our officers accordingly.
I do think the education is also really important. So I appreciate you doing that as well. I think, the fact that mopeds are in bike lanes, they shouldn't be, but do they know? I couldn't tell you. So I think education and signage is important as well.
Thank
you. John Rosmus, I think I see your hand up.
Yes, good evening, Captain. I just had a question. When an officer stops a speeding e-bike or like a moped or anything, what exactly happens during that stop? Does the officer ask for a driver's license or an ID? If a summons is given, how exactly is the summons given, if that makes sense?
Yeah, so that, being on any type of motorized bike, even a regular bike without a motor, like they have to follow the rules of the road. So, obviously you're not giving a bike a speeding ticket the way we would use our LiDAR guns to clock a regular vehicle. But if they ran through a light, if they're going the wrong way, they write under the VTL and the New York City rules and regulations.
Understood. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, Captain Fay, thank you so much for everything you've been doing.
Thank you.
All right, let's head over to PSA 3. Officers Ahmed and Salado, are you with us?
Hey, good evening. Can everybody hear me?
Yeah, we got you. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having us. This is Officer Ahmed, and I have Officer Salcedo with me.
Hey, how you guys doing?
We're actually out in the field right now, so we're just handling a missing right now, so it's gonna be a little tough. But just we don't have any major announcements from PSA 3's end. We just had in the 28-day period, we just had a homicide, which was opposite of one of our developments, Humboldt and Moore, from a stabbing, and there's a suspect that is wanted for that. Also, we had a gunpoint robbery at 124 Humboldt, which is 3 suspects committed a gunpoint robbery of a delivery person. 1 suspect was apprehended for that. 2 are still outstanding. And we have been seeing an increase of catalytic converter thefts from vehicles around Humboldt Street, if I'm not mistaken, and Debevoise and Barrett. So we are increasing our patrols around that area. That's like pretty much the majors in our developments going on right now. Me and Officer Salcedo, we cover Williamsburg houses, Barinquin houses, and Bushwick houses. So if anybody does have a question regarding those 3 developments, I'm gonna leave my phone number, 917-242-6863, and Officer Salcedo's phone number is
855-741. I'm sorry, hold on.
He's gonna just double check it. Sorry about that.
929-855-7410.
Yeah, these are direct department cell phones. You could just reach out to us, or you could always call the police service area 3, 718-386-4101. Thank you.
Thank you. And so just in case anybody missed that, would you be able to repeat all of those numbers, all 3?
Sure, yeah. So Officer Ahmed, AHMED. We cover Williamsburg, Barinquin, and Bushwick houses. My phone number is 917-242-6863. And Officer Salcedo, SALCEDO. His phone number is
929-855-7410.
And the police service area 3's phone number, you could always just call that if you can't get in touch with us. It's 718-386-4101. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Andrew Epstein, we're going to head your way next, representing Emily Gallagher.
Hi, all. Thanks so much, Ronan, for inviting me back. Great to be part of this conversation and hear from local precincts. Thank you, Inspector Fahey, for great work and partnership on so much going on around the district. The Assembly member herself is in Albany, where she's spending a lot of time this time of year. The legislative session kicked off just after New Year's and goes through June. So most of the week is in Albany, but as you all know, we're right in the mix every day, Monday through Friday, on Manhattan Avenue, 685 Manhattan Avenue, between Norman and Nassau. So right in the heart of the Greenpoint's commercial corridor. I don't have the kind of biggest thing I wanted to bring to you all tonight in the context of public safety is really just to pay attention to what's going on in Albany. Tomorrow, Governor Kathy Hochul releases her executive budget proposal. This is essentially the first major step in the state budget process that culminates in the deadline to pass a budget, which is April 1st. And I think understandably, New York City's budget and New York City council politics get a lot of attention because, they're responsible for the NYPD and the DOT and the Department of Sanitation and all these agencies we interact with. But the New York State budget is, I think at this point, about 2.5 times the size of New York City's budget. The state has tremendous responsibilities in very key sectors of life in New York City, and so much having to do with public safety. And it's really where, we're going to be fighting for and hopefully securing the kind of investments that can help us build sustainable and long-term public safety. Things like, is there enough support and funding for mental health and psychiatric care? Are there enough psychiatric beds for people experiencing a lot of distress or danger to themselves and others? Is there enough funding coming from the state for the city's shelter system? The New York State budget is really, and the New York State government is really who controls the MTA, while the NYPD certainly has a lot of responsibilities for keeping folks safe in the subway. A lot of the resources for running and operating the system. Are there enough cameras? Are there enough, how is everything working? Is it feeling clean? That kind of stuff all plays out really crucially in the New York State budget, but oftentimes we miss it because it's happening up in Albany and it's a little bit, opaque. So much of our criminal justice laws, however you feel about them, are enacted in Albany, jails in the prison system. I mean, so many facets of what we're talking, and of course, I think most crucially, the housing crisis in New York, which plays into so much of what we're seeing, from homelessness to displacement to people just feeling insecure and unstable because they're facing massive rent increases or are not able to find a safe and habitable home. So much of that has to do with what goes on in Albany. Certainly, we'll be doing our best to explain this budget process to everybody as we proceed over the next couple of months. But really the first step is tomorrow at noon, when the governor presents her budget plan and her budget proposal that the legislature will respond to. And we'll be looking closely at that, making sure that the investments are meeting the crises or the issues that our neighbors are facing here in New York City. So that's kind of the general thing I wanted to bring to this committee. I'm happy as always now or later to answer any questions about that process, questions about legislation that Albany is considering this year. And then of course, neighborhood concerns, constituent case issues, anything of that sort, we're here to help. We're at 685 Manhattan Avenue. Our phone number is 718-383-7474. And we have a general email line that we all check frequently throughout the day. That's district50@nyassembly.gov. So hopefully we're very accessible and reachable if there's anything you need. And happy to answer any questions if you have them. Thank you.
Andrew, thanks.
Yes, Simon, I have a question.
Go ahead, Simon.
Yeah, question is, are you considering doing some about the bail reform? Don't we agree that the biggest problem is the issue of the bail reform, the crime, the main concern? The police is saying that the biggest problem is the bail reform. That's why all this crime is spiking. So why are we, going around the bush? Why can't we stick to the issue, change the bail reform, reverse the, what was done till now? I mean, this has to change.
So I totally appreciate the question. Just to bring everybody up to speed, in 2019, before Emily took office, New York State passed a series of reforms to pretrial detention that kind of collectively people call bail reform. Basically, based on the premise essentially that ability to pay bail before you are convicted of a crime should not be the only determining factor in whether you await trial
in a detention or correctional facility. And that was really spurred by some pretty awful situations where very young people accused of very minor crimes had spent sometimes months or even years in Rikers Island and lost their lives either at their own hands or other people. So those laws came into effect in 2020. There has been, and I'm happy to send you these studies, and go back and forth in any depth that you want. Absolutely zero evidence linking changes in pre-trial detention to the nationwide increase in violent crime that we have seen since the beginning of the pandemic. And I do think it's important to bear that in mind, that all across the country since March 2020, in places that have the most restrictive no bail reform whatsoever, to places like New York, which have reformed their criminal justice laws, everywhere has seen saw over the course of 2020 and 2021 increases in several categories of violent crime. Thank God, and thanks a lot to the work of so many people, those rates have come down in New York City faster than other parts of the country. So, certainly, so that's just from where we are. Now, the governor has a different view of this, and both last year and this year, we are anticipating that she will make recommendations to change aspects of the bail reforms that were passed. And we will certainly assess those and look at those closely when she puts them forward. But a lot of and there was a 9-hour marathon hearing yesterday in the New York State Senate on criminal justice statistics. And again, nothing came out of that indicated that pretrial detention reforms are leading to an increase in crime. It has to be studied and looked at very closely. And I think actually a lot of what's going on, and this had something to do with the pandemic and maybe something to do with how the laws are explained, a lot of judges simply don't fully understand the rights that they have under the law to detain people or not before a trial. And thankfully, I think the message is getting out of what the law does and doesn't do. But I do think we need to be guided by facts in this. And I certainly have not seen any empirical evidence that has shown, and if anything, what we've seen is that more people are showing up to their court dates as a result of these reforms than had in the past. So I think I'd have to maybe respectfully disagree on the cause there, but certainly as the governor proposes additional changes to the law, we will look at them really closely.
Simon and Andrew, thank you. Lloyd, I think you've got your hand up. You're up next.
Yeah. Thanks everybody, and thank you, Andrew, for your time, and to the captain for their time, and the other police officers. I wanted to stay on this point a little bit because I think 2 months ago, I think toward the end of our meeting, quite a few of us on the committee, and there were some community members, we were talking about this issue and about this legitimate concern about whether or not it's bail reform related, but, or recidivism related. People are worried about this. I think it's safe to say that the election results revealed that that's the case throughout the state and across political leanings. And so I remember from that meeting that I heard a lot of what I'm hearing today, that there's a lot of focus, and rightfully so, on the nuanced mental health needs, right, and the housing needs that are precipitating some of the public safety concerns across the city. But that's only part of the issue, and I would hope that the Assemblywoman and her colleagues can really take this session as an opportunity to listen to residents and not just tell us that we are victims of fear mongering, to be honest. Like, I'm tired of that rhetoric, because a lot of people have a right to feel to be concerned about what's going on. And I think what I'm worried about, to be also frank on this, is that I'm worried that people on either side are going to use the term, we need to follow the facts, we need to follow the data, but they're not looking at all the data on either side. And I think we need to be really honest and transparent about what we're telling people and how we're framing it, not from a place of like moral, high ground stuff, because that's not where people are, and that didn't work. with people in November. I'll just be, it's just, I think people want actual solutions where we can be honest about the mental health needs, about the needs of various populations, but also about recidivism and what kinds of solutions you need to address that long-term and short-term. And so I wish that the Assemblywoman and her colleagues, alongside the governor, can really think creatively about solutions and not just, I guess, dig in their heels about, how we have to protect every single aspect of bail reform instead of really analyzing, like, are there certain areas that can be improved together with other tools? Because that's what we've been hearing, I think, as community members, and then we see that from other people around the city. So I just wanted to put that in there based off of what we talked about 2 months ago and what is a continuing conversation, it seems.
Totally. Thank you. I appreciate that. I think I would draw somewhat different lessons maybe than ones you're indicating from the election. While it's true that the governor did not perform as well as expected, voters of New York also returned Democratic supermajorities to the state legislature for only the third time in the history of New York, the other previous times being 2018 and 2020. And certainly, both elements of the media and the governor have roundly or squarely blamed the New York State legislature for what they are contending are problems in reforms to pretrial detention, and after the result of that, Democratic supermajorities have been returned to the state legislature. So I do think that's worth bearing in mind. I also think it is absolutely everybody deserves to feel safe. I don't think you can completely ignore the multiple factors that contribute to people's perceptions and feelings of crime, nor that the greatest concern about crime that we saw in New York voters were in the suburbs, Long Island and Westchester. People who report the greatest fears of crime, the greatest fears of New York City, and the sense that the city is spinning out of control into violent mayhem are people who primarily do not live or even visit the city. All of that being said, it is important to constantly assess and make sure that the laws are seeking their intended effect. And again, with bail reform, the concept was essentially, if you are accused of a crime but not convicted, where you await trial should not be solely a function of how much money you can spend on bail. Just because, in theory, right, we want a justice system that does not take into account the economic status of people accused of crimes, even though, of course, we know so much of what goes on in terms of crime has to do with economics. But certainly, thinking creatively, thinking holistically about the real problems of mental distress, of property crime, of theft, are things that we absolutely all need to work together and figure out robust and holistic solutions to, because I don't think we want to be in the situation of simply following what we are sort of told is the cause of this issue by some very interested parties and very interested media. And I think, but that doesn't mean you dismiss the underlying concerns, which are very real. So of course, I completely appreciate that point.
John, I think you've got your hand up.
Yeah, just a question. So recently I've been seeing that the city has experienced a migrant crisis, like people are setting up tents in Manhattan, and I understand that Emily represents Brooklyn and not Manhattan. But is there anything that the state is doing to maybe remedy the crisis or provide any funding or resources or any of that nature?
That's a really good question, John, because the city is absolutely dealing with a major crisis with this. I mean, the city's shelter population was already pretty close to capacity before, governors in Texas and Florida and other places started, in some cases tricking, in other cases inviting asylum seekers onto buses and being kind of dumping them in the Port Authority or elsewhere. And New York City and New York State, thankfully, has a right to shelter. If you want a place to sleep at night, the city has to provide you one. But, that capacity doesn't just, can't just be created out of thin air. And I do think that Mayor Adams is correct when he says the federal government and the state government have to pitch in here. So the assembly member has signed on to letters and statements circulated by legislators and others asking for relief in the state budget. We will get our first look tomorrow when the governor presents her executive budget proposal to see if she has risen to that challenge and put money into the budget to help New York City. And I'm hoping the federal government does the same. And I think we just need to keep hammering on them because New York City can't deal with this on their own. I totally agree with the mayor on that. And I know the assemblywoman does as well. So no, thank you for asking that issue, that
And
very important issue.
just one more thing. Let's just say, you get your funding and from the federal and the state and budgets. Where exactly would that money be going? Would it be going to renting out houses or hotels, or would it be what exactly, how would that money be spent?
It's a good question too. And I have to just admit I haven't followed every policy development very closely with this because it is the city government that is tasked with responding to this. As I understand it, it's constructing new shelter facilities or repurposing existing facilities like hotels and others. I think I didn't follow the issue closely, but there was a huge or there was some sort of kerfuffle the other night, I believe in Sunset Park, when folks who had been asylum seekers who had been temporarily housed in a hotel were being taken to the shelter system and they didn't want to go. And I think that, that's so connected to so many other kind of just street homelessness issues too, where people the shelter system is, some shelters, many shelters are so unsafe that people would rather be on the street. And we have to fix that problem for so many reasons. And a lot of that has to do with actually also opening up pathways to stable housing so that the people who have been stuck in the shelter system can actually get permanent housing. And then you open up shelter space for people who need more immediate relief. And there's some policies I could talk about in Albany that I think would really help with that. But in terms of what the city would do with all that money, I have to plead a little bit of ignorance. I'm not entirely sure what their big plan is, but they do need help.
All right, thank you.
Andrew, thanks so much for jumping in and fielding all those questions, and thanks Lloyd and John for posing them. Believe I see somebody from the Brooklyn DA's office. I don't know if you want to weigh in on some of this.
Hi there, good evening. This is Jonathan. I'm a public engagement associate with Brooklyn DA Eric Gonzalez. You probably saw me, we're back before the pandemic on CB1s, and now I sit on just to listen in on the CB1. So thank you for the invitation to be here.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks. Yeah, the one thing I will say is that the DA has spoken at length about the situation regarding the bail reform laws as well as the discovery laws. And from my understanding, and you could look up in his interviews that he's done on this topic, he recently did one on the radio. He does feel that there should be some more lean into increasing judicial discretion. And I think part of that, like Andrew stated, was educating judges on what their full power is and what they can do, but also leaning into something similar to the DA has proposed the New Jersey model, which is a completely cashless bail system, and it's heavily based on, it's evaluation based on risk to the community, and that's something that would require the judges to evaluate records and other factors into it. And so this topic is continually brought up, and the DA has shared his recommendations to the legislators. There's a legislative luncheon, I believe, coming up in February, where the different state legislators have been invited, and more the DA will go into some of the progress that's been made in Brooklyn and also some of the recommendations regarding bail reform, as well as the discovery laws, which I think are another situation as well. It's like a time limit. Once someone's arrested, there's a time limit for all the evidence, everything that investigation to be collected and handed to the defense. And so that the office, let me just make sure I say this correctly, has a limited amount of resources. So everything has to be weighed carefully. is this something that, you know, is going to be pursued? Is this something that's going to be thrown out when it goes in front of a judge? You know, all these things are weighed in, as well as, well, simultaneously working with our partners in the NYPD who are doing investigations and doing all this. So there's a lot of factors. And when the laws were passed, there wasn't funding for the discovery, for the changes. So all the prosecutorial offices had to figure it out with the resources they had. So, you know, these are ongoing conversations they had. The DA is open to engaging in a discussion with our legislators, and we're always taking feedback from the community. And yeah, so that's on those. And in terms of just a quick update, if you haven't had a chance on the DA's brooklynda.org, the latest Justice News issue of Justice News has come out, and just quickly, that we're shining a light on human trafficking. Also on our illegal ghost guns, our ghost gun unit has been working hard on that, and as well as reducing the crime reduction that we've seen across different parts of Brooklyn, and concerns about public safety. In terms of the ghost guns, recently there was an arrest about a gentleman who was purchasing parts over eBay. So this is like a multi-factored, all 360 degrees approach investigations into this to try to deal with the gun plague that we have and the gun violence that's happening in our city. And so, yeah, so I'm here if you have any questions. Like I tell everyone at any meeting, if I can't answer the question, I'll take it down and I'll find someone who can. And yeah, that's about it. Thanks.
Jonathan, appreciate you jumping in. I do have one question for you, and it's about repeat offenders. So I know in specific to Williamsburg, Greenpoint, same thing around the city, but specific to our neighborhoods, there's been a lot of incidents with break-ins and grand larcenies to commercial businesses where offenders will break in, they'll be arrested, and then, you know, the next week they'll go back. Wondering if you could speak specifically to that.
I would need if you get some more specifics of some of the cases. What I'll do is I'll go back to the gray zone, to the ADAs that handle that,
Sure.
To get some more insight into this. I know that, again, it's the weighing of the resources. It's the discovery laws, the amount of time, and the serious. Yeah, and it's so there's cases where the judge is like, no, I'm not gonna put a bail, and the person's back out, and they'll keep doing a thing. And so we have to think, outside the box. But like, just like the NYPD, the DA's office has to work within the confines of the law. There is some discretion, but you have to work within the law, and these laws, have changed. And so partly some of the things that I think the Captain Fahey has brought up was, trying to build up where there's someone who's an habitual, who's done this seriously, who's driving the crime stat up, and then targeting this person to try to get their information, get them to the point where it's enough that a judge can't just let them go. And that's some of the cases that have been worked on. And I think some of the businesses do this too. They won't stop someone, but they will note how much was stolen, and it builds over time. And so it's just these different ways of thinking about it, different ways of approaching the topic. But I will go back to Courtney Hogg, probably he's the deputy chief in the gray zone, and try to get some information, and if to get for the next meeting, and if not for CB1, for the CB1 meeting, I'll try to get an update for you then.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I mean, I know this is something that Commanding Officer Wintersbach and Commanding Officer Surubi over at the 83rd have also spoken about, where businesses are seeing the same individual with their security camera footage, sending it in, and then getting a little frustrated, upset that individual is coming back out. So maybe I'm asking less specific, more broadly. Maybe you could walk us through what the triggers are. Where is there different categories for the amount that's stolen, or the time, or anything like that?
From my understanding, it's $1,000 and up is a felony. So that's like the where it crosses over. When they did the bail reform laws, it was like column A, column B. So it's like a violent crime felony on the right, non-violent crime, stealing stuff like that on the left. And so when it went that, it was a very, like A and B. And so a lot of these crimes the businesses are being targeted are in that column. And so they can't be held. Well, there's no bail for that. And so that's, I think, one of the biggest issues.
So is it over 1,000 that once that individual reaches theft of over 1,000 that they're not eligible for bail?
I have to double check my numbers, but that's what I heard. I might be wrong, but if I am wrong, I will reach out to correct.
And then last question on this, and then I'll open it up to everybody else. For the bars, restaurants, businesses that do experience this, is there anything that you could recommend for them to help either you or the local precincts with this, other than things like security camera footage, that type of stuff?
I think the same thing that our partners in the NYPD have recommended is the way to go. Just increasing security. The terms of some of the stores, I know the Lamford gate, the gates that they use to close. I know a lot of these new stores don't have that stuff, so that's something that has to be considered to up your security protections, and just working with our partners in the NYPD.
Okay, thank you so much, Jonathan. Committee or public, anyone have any other thoughts or questions for Jonathan or Andrew? Okay, again, thank you so much to both of you, Jonathan especially. Thanks for jumping on, and looking forward to continuing this next month. So let's head over to DSS. Believe we have Yuri Sanchez with us.
Hi. Hello, Ronan and everyone else. Also joined by my colleague, Abigail Aberdeen. She's new to the team. Did you all hear me?
Yep, we got you.
Okay, great. So no major updates, but I do want to announce that Code Blue is in effect as of effective from 4 p.m. today until 8 a.m. tomorrow, February 1st. This happens when the temperature is 32 degrees Fahrenheit or below, including wind chill. So Code Blue is in effect. Folks should call 311 to report unsheltered individuals in need of assistance. And if I'm not mistaken, NYPD usually reports to try and locate the individual or individuals and offer resources and make attempts to bring them inside. No one should be out in this type of weather. There is indeed, I just want to touch on a little bit on the migrant crisis that was brought up. And to my knowledge and understanding, this is a right to shelter city. Not clear about the state, the right to shelter state. I do know that within the 5 boroughs that this is a right to shelter city. So anyone that presents at our intake or at Port Authority, the buses were coming in, we do have to provide shelter for the asylees. We have opened hotels for placements. The HERC is not under DHS's purview. This is run by HHC, and Moya is also involved. There are various navigation centers and a ton of resources available for the asylees that have come into New York City. Does anyone have any questions or concerns for me?
I've got 2 for you. First
Okay.
off, I believe you all, maybe last week or the week before, held the annual survey of street homelessness.
That's correct. Hope count occurred.
Yeah, well, I'm wondering if you could share those results with us.
It takes a while, Ronan, so it'll take some time. Once the results are out, I'll be sure to blast it out.
Awesome, thanks, Yuri.
You're welcome.
Other one that I wanted to check with you on, and maybe this is a joint question for you and Brittany, is the development for the Williamsburg shelter.
I don't have a current update as of yet, but I'm happy to check. What's the address that you do have?
Let me see if I can look it up.
Sorry, I
This
have all of Brooklyn, so it's hard for me to
No worries at all.
remember.
This was the collab with Breaking Ground. Brittany, maybe you could speak more to it.
Hi, I don't have an update on that, but I can also get more information for you.
No worries. Committee members, any questions for DSS or Breaking Ground?
I do. It's Lisa Bamonte.
Yep, go for it, Lisa.
Hi, everyone. I do have a question that I'm a little bit curious about. So I know that they opened up a shelter in, I believe it's Red Hook. Is that correct?
So it's a HERC, which is I don't want to misstate what the acronym means, but it's not under DHS's purview. This is run by the New York City Health and Hospitals.
Okay. No, I was just curious because my heart goes out to these people, especially families and children, having children of my own. And I just feel that, for these people coming here was very hard for them and the conditions they had to go through. So I was just wondering if, like, let's say, I know that there was a lot of pushback from a lot of people not wanting to go to Red Hook. But these places, I mean, isn't there security or anything, things like that? I know that it's not a specific, like they were in a private room and so on and so forth, but something is better than nothing. That's how kind of I feel. And I'm wondering if there are measures in these facilities to make these people feel safe and want to go instead of now camping out on the city streets because they don't want to go to these locations. So I was just curious about that.
That's a great question, and I appreciate your compassion for these individuals. So the HERC in Red Hook, this is for single adult men. Thankfully, families, have, hotels, where they are, an open space, that's not suitable for, children.
Right.
I can't speak to the measures that would make them feel safe, but I can imagine that there is some sort of security and staffing similar to our standard shelter sites and hotels.
Right. Well, that's why I think that from what I understood from the news, that they were trying to make more hotel rooms available to women and children. And that's why these individuals were being asked or being relocated to this specific site. So I just wanted some, I just wanted some feedback on the situation, but thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Lisa and Yuri. John, I think you've got your hand up.
Yes. But when it comes to housing people, for example, in a homeless shelter, so some people have, mental problems, some people have problems with alcohol, some people have problems with drugs. Is there any support for the people? Like, do you have, any help for these people, like, who are on substance abuse or, who have mental problems? Like, is there any help for these people, or are they just like sort of lumped into one space?
So that's a great question. We have various program shelter types, right? So someone that's just down on luck and, perhaps is looking for a job or has a job and needs a voucher, that person would be in a general population shelter. For folks with mental health needs and, drug, that those challenges, they're most likely suited for MICA shelters. And we do have medical clinics on site at some of these facilities. Staff is equipped and trained, social workers. If medical is not available on site, referrals are made, and there are resources in place for those individuals.
Understood. And how do people sort of get separated into those different shelters? Like how do you determine if somebody has a substance abuse versus a mental problem or any other problems? Like what is the process?
That's a
I'm
great
just curious.
question. So folks don't just, report to any shelter that they know of. You have to be assigned, right? So folks would go to intake. For families, it's in the Bronx, it's at Path, and a full assessment is done. For single adult men, that happens at 30th Street, aka Bellevue. You have to bring all your documents, answer a lot of questions, and determination will be made. Of course, there's some people that may slip through the cracks. But once, like, let's say they're in a general population shelter, and perhaps, behavior or something comes to light, then they may not be suited and they'll be transferred to the appropriate site, which is a MICA mental health shelter, so they can get the care and help that they need.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, John. Anyone else from committee or public? Yuri, one last question for you. Any upcoming events with DSS that we should watch out for?
None in the district that I'm aware of, but if anything comes, I'll be sure to send it your way.
Definitely. Thanks, Yuri.
You're
And
welcome.
Brittany and Abigail, thank you so much as well. So I think that concludes our public session for the night. I'll ask committee members to stick around, and everyone else, we'll see you in a couple months. Thank you all. Joanna, you with us?
Yes,
Hey, so I think that's it for tonight. Thanks so much for being here and recording it.
you're welcome.
Committee members, same thing that I asked last time we met, same thing this time again. You tell me, what did you think about tonight? Any thoughts or
Rama,
feedback? Yeah,
but, the whole meeting has to be recorded.
okay, then we
Okay.
can keep it recording.
Yes.
So I'm curious your thoughts. I know this is the first time we've tried this over WebEx.
I think it went well. I think we got a lot of information on the e-bikes. You got information on, the police departments, and everything seems to be doing good. The only thing is that, the bail, it has to work. They have to find a solution. I know there's people that maybe the first time they do something wrong, but there are people that do it wrong 2 or 3 times. Like I was watching the news this morning, and the article was where the van had went to different areas and they robbed places, and finally he must have crashed into something. They caught him, and his answer to the cops was that, "Oh, that's okay. I'm going to get out in about 24 hours anyway."
I
You know
saw
what I
that.
mean?
Ray. I saw that.
Yeah, I mean, that was like a smack in the face. I mean, for the police department, they do their diligence, and this is what happens. So that's really something that they really have to work on. If you do something wrong, it what fits the crime, and if they have to go to jail and pay a bail and stay there, then they should. They shouldn't be allowed out. There's too many people are afraid to go out. The seniors now are afraid to go out shopping. They have no home attendance. It's ridiculous. It's really something. They have to do something.
Esther, Lloyd, I think you guys had something.
I was just gonna say, I wonder if there's a way, because I mean, I would say the precinct knows better than us, if they could help us to highlight the concerns or the, repeat offenders or anything like that, that we could then, I don't know, I operate as a middleman, I'm not sure if it's the right term, but like somehow figure out if there's like specific issues or specific types of crimes or specific individuals, and we could maybe push the DA's office for answers on those. And that way we're like targeting the kind of, we don't know who it is that is the biggest problem in the district, but the police maybe should. So just a thought.
Yeah, I love that. As far as different types of crimes?
Either crimes or specific cases that we need to maybe, ask the DA about or something like that.
Yeah. I also like just being able to have the DA and the local precinct in the same conversation. I think that helped.
Excuse me, don't the precincts have that information for repeat offenders and stuff like that? I mean, I would think that maybe, I mean, I don't know if that information is available to us, to say like John Doe is a repeat offender. You know what I'm saying? I don't know how legally that works, but I think that they should have some type of, notion of who these repeat offenders are. I know that like in the past there was a particular person who was, breaking into cars and stuff like that, a couple of months ago, and it happened to be a repeat offender. They do know certain people and what they do and what they're capable of, but yeah, I that's a great idea. I wonder if there's a way for us to get involved with that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think our approach should be looking at it in a more broad sense. So I know from the 90th and 94th, it's been a lot of break-ins to commercial businesses, especially bars and restaurants, which is why I was bringing it up. So I think I agree. I think we come in with that, and maybe we come pushing that conversation more. And again, just having the DA and precinct in the same room is awesome at that.
All right. But I know too, a lot of the places that were broken into as well. I mean, as far as like where I am over here on like Larimer, Leonard, Jackson, were these smoke shops. And I think it's for the simple reason that they are selling marijuana in there. So I think that people feel that there's money, there's cash. So I think that they need to really figure out who's selling illegally. Because I think that however the law is, somebody had said they can go in there and, let's say, buy a pipe, right? And then as long as they, I don't know, spend a certain amount of money, they can, then get weed or, whatever it is. I don't know if that's true, but that's what somebody said to me. But I don't know. Does anybody know if that's true? No? So, but I think that that's another reason why a lot of these businesses were being targeted.
Yeah. The other reason that I had heard is a lot of those businesses don't have either security alarms or cameras or both,
Right.
which made it hard just because they're either operating as independent businesses or don't have the resources to have that.
Or they don't want them, Ronan.
Yeah.
There was a string of break-ins by me actually in a wine shop and a couple of restaurants. So same kind of situation of looking for cash, but in theory, no illegal businesses as far as I'm aware of.
Yeah.
I liked what you brought up about the trucks, Lisa. I thought
Yeah,
that was
I see them a lot around the north side. When I go and drive the kids to school or pick them up. So I see them a lot around that area. Not so much, let's say, on this side, like Graham Avenue and stuff like that. Mostly on Bedford, I've seen them.
Yeah, I was also curious to see if there was a noticeable increase over the past couple of months. So I'm assuming there was, but I kind of wanted to hear that specific.
Yeah, I mean, if anybody's out at night, it's something to maybe take notice of.
Yeah.
I also noticed that the 9-4 was saying that there was more than double the amount of moving violations over this past year. I think she said like 130 or something in last year and then 390 something this year, which is like pretty sizable increase in moving violations year over year. And, with the same 3 traffic officers seems, that would be challenging. I can imagine her position.
Yeah, I agree. And I kind of loved, I don't know, Eric, if you're still on, but thanks for bringing up that point.
I am sorry, but I missed that last question. Sorry. Did you want me to say something?
Oh, good. Esther had made a point about how there was a noticeable, sizable increase in moving violation offenses in the 94th.
Yeah, well, good. But I drive around the neighborhood all the time because I'm servicing all the studios in North Brooklyn. And I'm seeing crazy behavior not by pedestrians, although I have seen a lot of them walk into traffic looking at their phone, but some of the road rage lately, and these e-bikes are out of control. They really are. I find most cyclists are good, but I still have this thing where like city bike cyclists are like, hey, wouldn't it be cool to ride a bike? And I see a lot of like funky behavior that way. But I don't know. I have to, I have to say that we do need better street design, but I mean, that's, a generation worth of work, but that's all. I don't know what to say. But I'm glad the tickets are up. There's a lot of aggressive driving out there. I'm seeing more and more of it.
I agree, Eric.
Marie, what were you going to say?
Just wondering, do they have license plates, these e-bikes, or is just a regular? No, they don't.
No, and they should. And the other thing, Marie,
Yeah.
is the mopeds that are like running these bike lanes are all supposed
Uh-huh.
to be, they're all supposed to have license plates. And if I had $1 for everyone I saw without one, I
Yeah.
would retire. So it's, but you know, it's the enforcement. It's like you only have so many cops, and you know, with all due respect to the 9.0 and the 9.4, you know, I see a lot of cars just sitting, you know, and the bikes are speeding past. I mean, they can't catch them either, you know, because by the time they try to catch up to them, they're like they've blown 4 lights and whatever. So I don't want cops speeding around the neighborhood either, chasing them down. But it's, you know, I don't know, it's a
Yeah.
problem.
But then there's, oh, I'm sorry, Marie.
No, they should have legislation should do something about it. You know, our representatives, maybe they should pass something that if you
Well,
want, you know, if you want a bike, you got to have a license plate.
you know, the thing with the mopeds is these are the large percentage are businesses, right? So and for the e-bikes too. So there has to be pain delivered to the businesses, and you know that ultimately comes down to Uber Eats and Seamless and Grubhub and whatever, which good luck, but they're really the ones that need to, you know, I mean, I don't know how you write that legislation. It's kind of a really hard nut to crack, because like if the violator is the driver, that's one thing. But then how do you know, you can't punish a business for using Seamless, and how do you get money from Seamless for a violation? It's a really hard problem that we're going to have to be working on for the next couple of years to really find an intelligent solution to.
Well, you know, Eric, this is Lisa. So let's say you're a restaurant or a business and you have a delivery van, truck, car, whatever it may be, like a lot of the pizzerias do, and restaurants. And, you know, usually your name is on that vehicle, right? So if the driver goes through a red light, the cop is going to pull them over and give the driver a ticket. I think that the problem with these, you know, e-bikes and everything else is there's no accountability to the driver. There's no, you know, if they don't have a license plate. And then what if they do pull somebody over and they don't have a license or they don't have ID on them? You know, what happens? I mean, do they confiscate the bike? And
Yeah, I mean,
I'm curious to say, like, what happens? I mean, on my block here, we have City Bike, you know, a whole big thing of city bikes. And I tell you the truth, we have a block full of kids, and you know, these city bikes, they should have a license plate on them too, because I can't tell you how many people go up the one way or right on the sidewalk just to go and either, you know, and put the bike back or retrieve the bike or whatever it may be. I mean, I would love to put a video cam on this block. I mean, because it's really, it's ridiculous. It's
Yeah.
absolutely ridiculous. And there's no accountability.
Right. And also insurance. Don't forget
Right.
insurance. Yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, like if I'm driving and if I don't have my license, or if my license, you know, they're going to tell me to pull over, lock my car, and walk away. So, you know, there's that. Can they confiscate the bike? You know, are cops going to want to do that? Or are they going to, you know, wait and, you know, have a PD van come? I don't know. It's such a hard
But
problem.
I mean,
but
yeah, sorry, Eric.
yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, I mean, I was going to say, I mean, they can't impound it if there's not a universal restriction on it. I mean, if you don't need a license plate or an ID, then, I mean,
Well, I mean, if it doesn't have a license plate, these are the mopeds now. These are not the e-bikes or the bicycles.
I'm saying e-bikes until that restriction is universal across all those vehicles, then you can't really enforce it.
Yeah, right.
Anything with a petrol or diesel engine is easier to enforce than an e-bike, but an e-bike kind of is a little too crosses. And then
Yeah,
I mean, yeah,
you can get. I mean, I've seen cops write tickets for, you know, for cyclists, but I don't know. And you know, the other thing too is like, I mean, this isn't an excuse, but I do kind of feel for these drivers because, you know, they're hustling to make as much money as they can because they're not making a lot of money, to be fair. And, you know, Seamless and Uber are really, you know, so it's not the business. I mean, like Lisa, you know, if I see a Carmine's truck, it's like doing the speed limit, it's getting the pizza there, it's whatever, you know. It's not the people with the signs on their vehicles that are the problem, or the private delivery guys, you know.
Right.
It's the Seamless people,
Right.
you know. But
Right.
and it's I don't know. It's just I don't know. I think about this all the time too. So for as much as I think about it, you'd think I'd have an idea or two, but you know, I really don't.
Do you remember during the pandemic when people were doing deliveries and how they had to wear the vest that showed like where they were coming from, whether it be Carmine's or, you know, Bamonte's or wherever, and they wore the vest so that, you know, they could be recognizable. That went out the window. I think that went out the window because I don't see that anymore.
I haven't seen that either. Sorry.
Yeah. So now if let's say I'm curious, I don't do delivery, but let's say somebody's working for Seamless. So if they're working for Seamless, is it that they will pick up any order that comes to them from any establishment, or is it
Yeah.
that they just work for one establishment?
No, it's whoever's closest, whoever gets
Okay.
the call first, kind
Right.
of thing. Yeah.
Okay. So
It's
then
it's an algorithm.
put, yeah, going to be able to put, let's say, a sign on saying wherever you're coming from. That wouldn't work either.
Yeah, I mean, I think that'd be impossible to, you know, you'd have to have a placard for every restaurant
Right.
that participates. It's just crazy.
That's
I
either
mean, technically, the moped. I mean, if you want to divide it into the two pieces, the mopeds, to your point, Eric, are supposed to have license plates and driver's licenses. So that's a really clear cut.
Yeah.
Like there already exists rules and regulation in place. They just need to be enforced, or education needs to be better, or something. And then you, in theory, could tackle the e-bikes in a maybe more around the education, which is you can't go down the street the wrong way and you're not supposed to be on the sidewalk. I mean, again, seems obvious, but you never know, right? So maybe you can like divide up the two. I'm not entirely sure who is responsible for all these different things between the agencies and whatnot, but in theory, like I guess that's how I would divide it in my head.
Well, the other part of the problem too, Esther, is that the licenses, right, come from the state, right? So that's so then you have to get the state involved, yeah. And you know, honestly, the e-bikes really should be licensed like the mopeds because those things do 40 miles an hour. I mean, let's be real, you know. So you know, I saw a woman get clipped in Manhattan now the driver stuck around, and she was okay, but she was eventually okay, right? So, but there was nothing. They didn't call the cops. I don't know, but the e-bikes really need to be regulated like mopeds. It's just not practical. And I also don't believe that we need education to say don't ride on the sidewalk or go the wrong way down a you know, we're not 12 years old, you know. So and a 12-year-old can be on the sidewalk with a bike, but you know, it's a whole other thing. Anyway. So there you go. The debate continues.
So any other topics that we want to keep focusing on other than bail reform and e-bikes and mopeds and all that?
No.
I did want to raise something. I don't know if our committee like takes on, or which committee in general takes on the purview of like sanitation and like trash. I've noticed this like school off the Hughes Street M&J stop that just has like a mountain of trash accumulate like throughout the week, and where like you only have like a foot on the sidewalk to walk by. And it's like an active rat zone too, I've noticed. So it's super gross, obviously. But I don't know if that's like under the purview of this committee.
So technically it is. So technically
Technically,
it kind
right.
of falls between the cracks, and if somebody were to pick it up, it'd be us. So DSNY has we're scheduled to come to this, backed out at the last minute. I had OCM come as well, which I was excited about. But yeah, so that's us. So if you have the address, let's work on that.
Okay. Yeah, I can send that over to you.
Because when I met with all of you before we started doing these, I was kind of interested because Lloyd brought up just the increase of rats and vermin and everything else, and this is kind of where it all stems from in my eyes.
Yeah, yeah. And then I don't know like what the culture or like way of doing things is on the community board historically, but I was wondering if there's like a listserv for us to like email like out to each other like by committee, or if it's for privacy concerns, which I understand, right? You know, that we don't do that. I was just want to double check like how, you know, we do committee communications.
Joanna, I'll let you take that one if you're there.
When you first enter the community board, we gave you a form to fill out. So some of the board members choose not to give their information out. So it just depends. Within your committee, I did give Mr. Daly the information for some of his committee members that I allowed.
Okay,
So it
gotcha.
just depends on them. And as for any complaints with sanitation, you could always send them to the community board, and I will send it to our contact at the garage.
Gotcha.
So two points for you, Lloyd. So if you're looking for all of our emails for everybody that's given it, look at the email that I sent out this morning, because that's got all of ours as
Oh,
addressed.
okay. Gotcha.
And then going off of what Joanna said, the other best way in this city to escalate things is through 311, because through 311, it's the agency in the city that connects everybody else. It's the only agency that kind of connects everybody, and it allows you to track it.
Gotcha. Thanks for that.
Once you have that 311, just email it to the community board. That way I can give it to the sanitation.
Okay, that sounds good. And then lastly, like circling back to our concerns about public safety, it seems like the focus that a lot of legislators, including, you know, our own, is that they want to focus on the population that's like most impacted by mental health concerns, right? Understandably, there's a legit concern there, and then housing needs, right? But that again, like I don't think I'm satisfied by that response, because there's a lot of other actors in the system that are also causing stress on law enforcement resources in our communities. And so I'm wondering if, I don't know, again, like historically what this board has done collectively, but if there's a way for us to, I don't know, to come to collectively to decision that where we say we support these resources to these mental health solutions, right? Obviously, but in, you know, part of that, like, or our support for that is contingent on support towards funding more traffic officers, right, for our community, or funding like various cameras, right? Like we can think creatively about how to tie our legit concerns that are not being like considered to these other like to other focuses of addressing public safety. So just wanted to put that out there. And
No, definitely. Joanna, correct me on this, but this would be a collaboration in part with board budget.
Right, but it will be with Gina Barros.
Gina Barros, who is on our committee but not here tonight.
She's planning to have a meeting soon. So
Okay, awesome. Do you have the date of that meeting?
not yet.
Okay, so when we get the date of that meeting, we can share and bring that up on their meeting, because in the past we've made recommendations, and we've done that in the form of a letter that's signed by the community board and then voted on at the public meetings.
awesome.
Yeah, Joanna, am I correct there?
Yes, you're correct.
Awesome. Anybody got anything else before we break for the night? Okay, well, thank you, everyone. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Night.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.